guys, so I'm here to quickly do my end of month reading wrap up. So I did a mid-month reading wrap up for September where I reviewed the first 6 books I read in the month, so if you want to find out my thoughts on those books, I will of course link that. These are the books I read in the second half of the month. Not quite as many, so it shouldn't be a terribly long video, but some really interesting books. Before I get into the books, so I thought I would very quickly mention that because I get asked more than anything else questions about university, my experience at university, school, studying, and advice for people at different stages in education. I thought I would do a dedicated Q&A video to answer some of your questions, and have already shared a form which you can submit your questions to via Twitter, and some of you have already sent in your questions, but I thought I'd mention it in a video quickly so that a few more of you who maybe don't follow me on Twitter would see it and could submit your questions before I film that Q&A. But without further ado, let's get into the books. I'm going to start off with Lullaby by Leila Slimani. This is published by Faber and it is a translation of a French novella written by obviously the author, and this edition is translated by Sam Taylor. Now this is a very intriguing book. It's not out yet, it comes out in January of 2018, so I do apologise for the slightly advanced review, but you can always add it to your wish list for the beginning of next year. This, or if you speak French, you can buy the French edition. This is a literary dark thriller, I would say. It centres around a family living in France, and they have 2 young children, and they decide to get a nanny because the wife is going back to work after having been out of work for a few years. Now, right from the beginning of the book, you know, first page, that the nanny kills both of the children. This happens in like the first 2 or 3 pages. This is all detailed to you, which is the end of the story. So at the beginning of the book, you start at the end of the story, you find out that the nanny has killed the children, and then you flash back to the past when this couple decide that it is time to get a nanny, and you gradually follow the unravelling of how we came to the moment at the beginning of the book in which the nanny killed the children. So you get the insight of both the mother and the nanny's heads. We know what's going on in their thoughts, we kind of start to understand them better as characters, perhaps their relationship, what's going on in the nanny's head, why she might have done something like this, and how you can essentially just not know somebody despite the fact that they are in your life every single day. There can be something really disturbing going on beneath the surface. I thought this was really well written. I imagine the translation is a really good translation as it reads really well. It's very nice to read, like I said, literary thriller. And I think it worked that you knew what happened at the very beginning. It made the whole book so unsettling and so disturbing throughout with that knowledge. But I will say I felt like the ending was maybe a little bit too quick, and perhaps that's because you already knew what happened. It just kind of wrapped up and that was that. But that doesn't mean I would change the structure. I still think that worked really well, that going into it knowing what horrible thing happens. I think it really made it a really interesting character study and really disturbing, and you were constantly sitting there with sort of anticipation, waiting for clues and for things to come to an end. I have to say, because this is one of the emotions that constantly struck me, particularly in the first half of this book, was how frustrated I was with all of the characters who basically shamed the mother in this family for going back to work. I think that was the purpose. I don't think you're meant to agree with them. I'm not criticising the book. These were annoying things for the characters to do. Her husband and her husband's mother and just a few other people would make comments as if somehow she was doing something wrong for going back to work, but he wasn't doing anything wrong for working. It's just, obviously men and women are welcome to stay at home with their children if that's the life they choose, and that's wonderful, but equally both men and women have the right to work, even as parents, if that's what they choose. I just found that, oh, it drove me bonkers. And again, not a criticism of the book, just didn't like those characters. I think you were meant to feel the frustration and part of that kind of gendered double standard. And yeah, I thought it was a really, really interesting book. I enjoyed it. I would definitely check out more by this author. Yeah, would recommend. Next up is a book I listened to on audiobook, and that is The Van by Roddy Doyle. This is part of a 3-book series that Roddy Doyle wrote called the Barrytown Trilogy, and each of the books in this series follow a different member of a family who live in Dublin. The one that's probably the most famous, the most well known, is The Commitments, which follows the son in the family as he sets up a soul band with his friends. I've read The Commitments and I wanted to read more of this series, and The Van is the one that got shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, so it's kind of had the most literary merit praise, even if it's not necessarily the most famous one, and it's the one that my dad said was the best, so I decided to read The Van. And it's really good, really, really good. I really need to read more of Roddy Doyle's adult work in general, but everything I've read by him so far I've loved. And this book is about the dad in the family, and he has been made redundant prior to the beginning of the book, and his family is struggling to get by, and they have to live very tight because he can't find any work. And then at the beginning of the book, one of his friends also gets made redundant. So they're both in a similar position of, struggling to make ends meet and support their families, and just how that takes on a toll on them. And they decide with the recently made redundant guy's redundancy check to buy a old chippy van, or I think they call it a chipper van. In Scotland we say chippy, but basically a chip shop on wheels where you would buy battered fish and chips. And they decide to set up this little business together, and it's during the time of the World Cup, and Ireland's participating in the Football World Cup, and so they're taking advantage of those demographics and travelling around to different spots in their van, and just having a bit of a whale of a time. It's a kind of hard-hitting comedy, if that's what you could call it. It's a comical novel, but obviously deals with quite real themes of the struggles faced in people's lives and these two guys' friendship, and yeah, it's really good fun. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I really need to read more Roddy Doyle. And then lastly, for books that I finished this month, I have The Sweet Farthing by Lullaby. This is the third in the Gemma Doyle trilogy by Lullaby. You will have seen me talk about the first 2 books in this series, A Great and Terrible Beauty and Rebel Angels, in my previous wrap-up, in which I shared with you how much I adored them. I gave them both 5 out of 5 stars. They were truly magnificent. The premise is that a 16-year-old girl, Gemma Doyle, who has grown up her entire life in India in the late 1800s, is sent to a boarding school on the outskirts of London, well, a girls' finishing school on the outskirts of London, and at the same time as this kind of new life that she's having to lead, she also starts to get visions of another magical world. So it's a sort of period fantasy, and it is truly wonderful, the whole series as a whole. I'd be interested, would you like a full review of the series? I could do it in 2 parts, a spoiler-free part and a spoilery part, and let me know. But as I said, I loved the first 2 in the series, and I did love this as well. I will talk a little bit more about this one specifically because this is the one I read, but this one's a lot longer. This is over 800 pages. I know some people didn't like that it was so long and felt it was quite slow. I don't mind slow books. I love world building. I love just getting to know the characters, and I don't need action constantly, and I was really pleased that this book was this long. It didn't bother me at all. In fact, I wish they'd all been this long. The more the better for me, so I really liked the length. And I was really, really enjoying it, but there is something that happens near the end. If you've read them, you'll know what it is, which I personally didn't think was the right decision. I think it was a bit of a cliche and an easy way out of perhaps plotting out the future of these characters. I didn't think it was the best decision to make. Yeah, I thought cliche, and that did temper my enjoyment of the ending, but there were still some really good things about the ending. I didn't hate the ending, I just think that lowered it slightly from a 5-star to a 4-star for me, and if I did do a review I could talk about that in more detail. But I still loved this series, and a 4-star is not a bad rating. I still love all of the characters. Gemma and her friends, Felicity and Anne, are just wonderful, and it was really wonderful getting to see their stories develop, and them develop as characters, and kind of come out of their shells and see what happened to them. But yeah, those are my thoughts without giving any spoilers. I am midway through a number of other books, so no doubt you will see me talk about those come October and during my currently reading videos. But if you have any thoughts on the books I've mentioned in this video, I would love to hear them. Don't forget to check out the first part of my wrap up, and until next time guys, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye!